Welcome back, everyone, to the Gamemode Creative podcast. Joining us today is Mulberry. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing well. And of course, Rainboom is here also, co-host.
Hi.
But I feel like
Pleasure
you
to
don't
be
need
on the
any
podcast,
introduction.
No, well, it doesn't hurt because sometimes you listening, or you and I even, Meg, may forget who we are, and we may just need the extra bit of reintroducing just in case. Just in the slight off chance that we may need it. But no, I think I might drone on too long for that.
Since Mulberry is our guest, I was going to ask him about his, journey, if you will, in Minecraft. What led you to pick up Minecraft originally? And also what led you to do what you do in Minecraft today? I guess you can just explain a little bit about yourself and what you do with Minecraft in your own words.
And one thing I'll probably interject really quickly is that the reason why Meg is setting this up, in case you have never met Mulberry or heard of Mulberry before, is because his dealings are actually not just as we typically might have a builder or somebody on, but a bit more of an extension into the realms of, maybe I'll hint at development, but I'll let Mulberry tell more of that story. So, yeah, take it away.
Yeah. Well, I think I first picked up Minecraft a very long time ago during the beta days. And I didn't start development until a little bit later. I think I just worked on a few Forge mods or something. Nothing particularly interesting. Nothing that I released. But then I was playing a server called Hypixel. They have a game mode called Hypixel Skyblock, and I was working on this mod or this quality of life thing called Not Enough Updates, which allowed you to kind of view all the items in the game, and it had a whole bunch of other features that helped with that made your experience in Hypixel Skyblock nicer. So that was probably my first foray into kind of making Minecraft mods that other people have actually used. And so that was pretty cool. I worked on that for a couple years, and it was funny because by the time I started working on that mod, I'd already quit Hypixel Skyblock. So I was creating this mod, but then I wasn't even using it myself. But yeah, I was working on that for a couple of years, and then I started working on a server called Gauntlet. I'm still working on the server. Gauntlet's kind of this roguelike dungeon crawler with MMORPG elements that I'm working on, still working on. And as part of this server, we needed some building tools to create certain things a little bit faster. And so I just created a quick mod, small mod called Builder Mod. Very creative name, I know. With a few tools. It had a smooth tool and a move tool or something like that. And then the person who I was working on it with, Soki, he was like, these tools are pretty cool. You could probably create some more of these. And so eventually I put some more development time into it, and that turned into this mod called Axiom, which is probably, I think at this point, the project that I'm most known for. Axiom is a building mod. Which you need to install on the client, and it adds all this UI, a bunch of UIs to the game, adds a whole bunch of different tools you can visualize and use, a bunch of operations, a bunch of other kind of smaller features, being able to switch hotbars, activate different flight modes. It has a lot of content there. And the most recent project that I've worked on is a mod called Flashback. So that one released, I think, around 2 weeks ago. Which is a tool that allows you to record your Minecraft gameplay, play it back, and then create cinematics out of that. So Axiom intended for Minecraft builders, Flashback intended for Minecraft content creators. And yeah, that's basically where I stand and what I've done.
Which is really cool. And we're going to get to Axiom and a lot of the mod making and the things that you've been doing lately, all those projects in a bit. But what I think we're curious about as well, and especially to you listening, would be what got you started into the interest of developing plugins. I know you mentioned that you got involved in the Skyblock realm on Hypixel and all that, but what do you think it was that got you, that drew your attention or caught your eye for when you thought, this might be cool getting into the development side of things?
I mean, I don't think there's anything, there's not really a eureka moment. It's more just I I see this kind of gap or this thing that people are interested in, and I have the ability to make that thing. So it's like, why not? Why not make that thing?
So
Oh
you've
yeah,
been
so kind of like
developing.
as you worked on it. Yeah,
Have you
yeah.
been developing long before Minecraft then?
A few things here and there. I think most of my projects have been in the context of Minecraft. I've obviously done a whole lot of programming outside of Minecraft, but Minecraft in particular is very special to me in terms of development. I think there's a lot. It's very interesting, right? Because you don't have to deal with a lot of kind of boilerplate or like other work you need to do to get something set up. When you're creating stuff in the context of Minecraft, like the kind of landscape is already there, right? And it's just a matter of kind of painting on top of that and creating something on top of that, which I think is it's very motivating, right? Because you don't have to deal with a lot of the kind of like you can just get straight into it and start creating things, and you can like see the immediate benefit of it, and you can like start sending that to people, and people can start using that immediately, and people can like get benefit from that immediately. I can create a new tool in Axiom, people can like start using that tool right away. I can create a new feature in Flashback, people can use that right away, and so that way it's very it's a huge motivation factor, right? Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, there's kind of that foundation is set.
Yeah. It's already there, and
Yeah.
it's not a steep battle to have to make it all happen. Unlike, I guess, other environments where there's a lot more legwork you have to do by yourself before you can get something equally as instant, almost in a sense, as Minecraft-based releases, which is interesting because...
I guess
yeah,
it would be sort of similar to like building in Minecraft, right? It's like you can, like, why don't you just recreate the Minecraft build, but in Blender? It's like, well, it's nice to be able to do it in
That
Minecraft.
is true.
It
Yeah,
is a
that's
little
true.
faster. You get your textures all at once and the shape. You're putting your shapes and textures down together sometimes. So that is a time saver.
100%. Gee, imagine if people were actually just trying to build Minecraft builds like in Blender or something like that instead of building them in Minecraft before doing them in Blender. An interesting thought, because I know for me, there's one thing when it comes to just developing, plugins or quick things that might change the gameplay or enhance the gameplay, but then you've got these kinds of environments, like again, we'll get to Axiom and all that in a moment, which are, I'm sure that from a coding or a development perspective, some people might see as very intensive. Did you ever come across, did you find challenges at times when it came to delving into kind of this next level of working or trying to develop these kinds of plugins? Because I know I remember when I took a brief attempt even at just plugins, like basic coding type environments in Minecraft, just to say, oh, I want to be able to sit on slabs or stairs, but found myself running into numerous bugs if I try to code it myself. Did you ever have any roadblocks of your own? Because those can be deterrents for some people that want to get into development. Well, they'll say, oh, I give up. I don't know what's going to happen here. But how are you able to break through, and if you happen to encounter any of that sort of challenge?
I think with Axiom specifically, most of the time when I encounter a problem, the problem is less on the technical side of things, like how can this work, and more on the creative side of things, which is like, how can I write an algorithm that actually looks good, right?
Okay, yeah.
So, because a lot of the time, you can take inspiration from, existing work. Like a lot of kind of the things that exist in Axiom are, inspired by, well-known techniques that have existed for 30 years and have been in Blender. But a lot of the time as well, because Minecraft is, a voxel game, it requires some sort of novel solution to, how to make something look smooth or how to make something rotate the right way. And those things primarily are the biggest challenges that I encounter, right? Because it's not just how can you make this work. It's like, okay, you've got this to work, but it doesn't look very good. It doesn't work very well. So how can you, make it look better? How can you make it run faster? How can you make it easier to use for the users? How can you make the user experience better, right?
Yes.
Easier to understand. So these are the challenges that I typically encounter with Axiom.
And I guess that's true because creativity is so subjective, and what people might see, like there might be a certain crowd that will like a certain way of having Axiom perform, but then there's another group of people that have a whole different perspective. And I think technicality aside, that can certainly be where I know there's probably been a lot of discussion and a lot of thought into those elements for sure. Would you say?
Yeah. I mean, one interesting thing I might mention is the hardest feature or the most difficult feature that I've added to Axiom is probably not one that you might expect. The most difficult feature or algorithm I added is the ability to rotate things at non-90 degree angles, right? Which on the face of it, that doesn't sound that hard, right? It's like, okay, you just move the blocks around a little bit, but when you dig deeper into it, there's a lot of kind of things you need to make sure happens. Like if you're rotating something, make sure like it doesn't produce any holes. If you're rotating, say, a tree, and that tree has a connected branch, make sure that when the rotate finishes, that branch doesn't suddenly become disconnected, right?
Yes.
And so, while it might seem simple on the face of it, like, you just rotate at 90 degrees, I think the non-90 degree rotation algorithm that I wrote for Axiom, I think took like a week or something straight of just like trying different things. Didn't work, try another thing, didn't work, and then keep going. And eventually I got an algorithm that I am pretty happy with. So the algorithm there was based on a 2D rotation algorithm called Rot Spray, which is well known. But as I mentioned before, even if there's kind of this work that exists previously, because Minecraft is 3D and voxels, that adds an extra layer, and taking that from 2D to 3D and also fixing some of the other issues is where all that difficulty came from.
Yeah, I was going to say, even just thinking, because I would agree in the sense that I was thinking it could be rotation. And this is me coming strictly from somebody who mostly uses World Edit, and I'll admit that openly. And there's a good reason why they specify even there, and I'm sure other algorithms already existed well into this, even while World Edit was being developed and so on, that you could only, or your recommendation was only to rotate things in multiples of 90, because the environment is that exactly, right? Where it's not necessarily originally meant to have things rotate at non-right angles, whether regardless of the direction, even if it was strictly 2D or 3D. So trying to get them right, and regardless, I guess, of how big, because I know bigger buildings or larger builds, I think it'd be easier to see the impact of a 1 or a smaller degree rotation. But then as you get smaller, of course, there's an extent, I'm sure. But as you get smaller, then it gets harder to really see that something was actually rotated more than just, or at a much smaller scale or a unit compared to just 90 degrees or so. But it is interesting thinking that in a game that is just blocks that are all at right angles, you could still somehow achieve rotations that are not just 90s. So it is an interesting concept.
And you can do it with World Edit too, but I love the visualizer in Axiom. I'm kind of...
Oh, yeah.
So I don't use Axiom for everything yet. I'm still kind of learning it, but I do like the... What is it called? Off-axis rotation, whatever it's called in there.
Yeah, non-90 degree rotations.
Yeah.
Like that.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Because I think or maybe I was just doing it wrong, but I thought that World Edits was really messy or something like that. But from
I think no matter what tool you use, regardless of how much, I know you put a lot of work into it, but it's still going to have imperfections just due to the nature of Minecraft. But that's part of what, like, at least for me as a builder, I don't mind it if it's perfect or not, because no matter what tools I'm using, I'm fully expecting that it's just getting me started, and I have more that I'm going to touch on and add to it after I use the command. But I do, it still does the job well enough where I have to do not nearly as much touch-up work. So that's always appreciated.
It takes most of the guesswork out.
Yeah, most of the guesswork, and that's really what you just want to avoid, is all of that.
I mean, who will measure in single degree angles? I don't know if anybody, even people that aspire to be mathematicians, could probably do that.
Even 45 degree angles are problematic, right? Like, if you have, say, a line that's like 5 blocks long, try to rotate that at 45 degrees. It's like, well, you can't just make that 5 blocks diagonally, because that's not
exactly
5 blocks long anymore, right? Like, you can't. It's impossible to map a 2D grid and then rotate that. Like, it changes the number of blocks you need. So you either need to, add some more blocks or like remove some blocks, and that oftentimes can be very hard for like a computer to figure out, right? Which is where obviously the builder needs to step in and kind of adjust things a little bit.
Which does bring up another good point about, we don't think we've talked about that in the podcast before, about how 45-degree angles are technically longer than a straight. If you had 5 blocks straight in a line and then 5 blocks in a diagonal, the diagonal is actually going to appear longer. So yeah, that's something that a builder needs to be conscious of too, that as they're building, you can't always rely on the number of blocks when building on angles to be the same distance. Interesting that you take that into account too with the rotation tool. I never thought about that.
Yeah, because people would think, and yeah, it's true. We overlook that so much that a 45 is just, oh, sure, we just turn things around and into that and just make it look slanted. Even for me with city building, like when I would do my roads and things, I used to just remember that, oh, you know what? If a road is 6 blocks wide, then if I do it at a 45-degree angle, then it's also going to be 6 diagonal units wide. But then when I look at it visually, especially now that with the advent of dynamic maps and other type of overhead view things, I look at those kinds of roads and realize, oh, wait a minute, no, these don't look the same. And it won't be until I actually use, say, a curve, like say base my curved roads on an actual curve, so say from a straight segment to an angled segment, and I actually do the math properly and connecting the two together, then I see that if I try to count from a straight segment to a 45-degree segment, that the width across on the diagonal one's not going to be exactly the same. And it's a mystery to me still, but I mean, if it works, it works, but I'll know that I should just never take a number in the straight realm and use the same thing in the angled realm.
It's about 1.4 blocks longer diagonal.
Something like that.
I usually go like 1 block less when doing a diagonal, just it's close enough. It's as close as you're probably going to get it.
Yeah, or you use other blocks nearby as your kind of help make it look more like 1.4, even if it isn't actually 1.4.
Yeah, I suppose you could attach like a wall on the end or a trapdoor or something
or just like the relative like position of everything else nearby. Yeah. One question actually, Mo, out of curiosity, going back to when you first started with mods, and something that actually came to me, because I know that there's always something that everybody at some point of having played Minecraft for a certain period of time and knowing what mods are out there, what's out there that can to help with their building experience or even just their game experience. Was there anything for you, and whether or not Axiom was a result of this, that you thought that Minecraft was missing as a functionality, or if there was no mod that was doing something that was like, gee, I really wish this was something that Minecraft, or there was a mod for this? Do you remember like one of the biggest things that came to your mind in that regard?
I think probably the biggest thing with Axiom isn't that like there aren't other tools that can do similar things, because most of the functionality in Axiom you can also do in other tools. But I think with Axiom mainly, the thing that I look to is how can I improve the user experience of this? How can I make, doing something as mundane as copy and pasting something nicer to do with like, visualizing things, or, having a gizmo, or, taking advantage of things that only exist on the client, right? So, for example, this is a very subtle thing, but in Axiom, if you, do like a brushstroke, it doesn't matter how fast you do the brushstroke. It's always going to keep track of your mouse position perfectly. And there's a lot of kind of very small things like that in the mod, which just make subtle improvements on the user experience. And that's the main thing that I look into. I think that there's a few things that Axiom provides that are unique. Like, I think, for example, the smooth tool in Axiom is a unique algorithm. I think the smooth snow in Axiom is unique, but those are kind of less important to me than the improvements that I can make to just general user experience, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to ask a completely different question. Is there any kind of mod that you've created in the past, or even a feature that you tried to add to Axiom, one or the other, that was you completely coded it, but it turned out to be an utter failure, so you had to scrap it? Was there anything that you've made like that?
There is. There was, and you know this tool. It was the tree tool. And it's very interesting. So there was this tool that I was working on, and basically the idea was that people, primarily like terrain builders, right, don't like, sorry, they don't like building trees from scratch, right? Like if you're doing a massive terrain, you don't want to build each individual tree from scratch. So what terrain builders typically do is they will either create or download or buy a tree pack from the internet, which contains a bunch of pre-built trees, and then paste that over the terrain. And so my idea was, why don't I create essentially a tree pack, but using an algorithm, and I can make it so that the tree automatically adapts to the terrain, and so if you're like pasting it against a cliff, the tree can like naturally avoid the cliff, and things like this. That was the premise, at least. The biggest reason for why I scrapped it was because I realized that like I could work on this tool, and it was a lot of work to create, a bunch of variety of trees, but no matter how many trees I create, it's kind of inevitable after, like a year or 2 years that they'll become kind of boring and stale, right? Like people don't use vanilla trees in their build, mainly because the vanilla trees don't look very good, but also because they're very generic, right? And you look at a vanilla and you look at a build with a vanilla tree, and you go, oh, that's boring. There's a vanilla tree there. And so what I realized was that same thing is probably bound to happen if I create this tree tool, right? People are going to look at terrain and be like, oh, that's the Axiom tree. That's boring, right? And so I think that was the biggest reason why I dropped it. There were also some other concerns around, like people trying to, take credit for the trees, or trying to like resell the trees, which I think you brought up, Meg.
Yeah.
Generally with tools, I try to make them kind of timeless in a sense, right? Where it's like, instead of creating something very, very specific, I try to create tools that are a little bit more generic and a little bit more composable, right? So like, instead of just having a tool that does one specific thing and like that's done, I tend to prefer to create tools at this point that are kind of you can like use it as part of a process, right? So you might use tool A, then tool B, then tool C, and then that is how you can create something. And I think that approach is a lot better because it gives the builder a lot more creative control over the process, rather than just oh, here's a tree tool and it makes trees for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, the other thing that popped in my head was the TerraGen command from Axiom. Like that does like generate a lot of the terrain for you, and some people could take that terrain and just leave it as is. I mean, I've even done it before, not gonna lie, but that's just because. But you can still like add to it. You can take that as like a base and add to it. And I suppose even if you did have some kind of tree tool, I don't see people having the patience to add to it, I guess. Like they would either want to make their own trees or just leave them at the default Axiom tree. I don't know. It doesn't seem like something that people would be as interested in adding on to it to make it their own.
I guess it's the world of instantaneous desire, right? And sort of saying, well, if there's a tool that does terrain, I just hope that this terrain looks good enough and it'll pass off as fine. And
it depends on your
needs. It takes
needs.
a certain eye. Yeah, and that's the thing.
And also the more realistic that the command is, like the more realistic of the thing that it's making. If the terrain is super uber realistic, then that's going to be a little bit overpowered. But I think the TerraGen command handles it nicely, where it doesn't like it doesn't look the greatest by itself. Like you do need to kind of tweak it if you want to look more realistic.
Oh yeah.
So
Yep. But that's where the creativity comes in, and however much or little you want to put into it is entirely up to you for that. And I was going to say too, Mole, that with the reach that you're doing, say with Axiom and even with the Flashback mod and stuff, these are areas that I find that also lend themselves readily to updates, where you'll have no problem finding things to update as well, compared to I think something that was more specific. And if there was a tool that say was trying to achieve a very specific function, that either later on, something happens in the realm of Minecraft from a back end perspective, and it could no longer be supported, or just hits obsolescence or something like that. But with things like the user experience that you're creating in Axiom, it's just there's a wealth of things that are available, and then other improvements that I'm sure that you can continue to do and easily adapt to the ever rapidly changing world of Minecraft. And I say rapidly because there are sometimes little sneaky things that every new release comes in with that I was never made aware of, like name changes in the back end or things like that. Like one of the funniest things that, and this is so minor to me, but yet somehow still struck with me, that some of the Minecraft IDs are ever so slightly changing for existing items. Like I think grass was now extended to short and tall grass if you try to do that in World Edit, for example. And it threw me off for the longest time. The first time I found out I was trying to do it on, I think it was 121 they introduced it, I think. But it was recent.
It's been around
definitely
longer.
very recent. Really?
I think no, the short grass change I think was 124. Good after
one of those.
Google it.
Yeah. But it threw me off, and I was going, "There's no way," because I was like, this command worked all the time, and then until I actually ran through the different name IDs and realized, oh, so they did change it for something. So the little things like that, where
it was 123/4.
Okay, gotcha. But yeah, at least I think that Axiom it's a robust program.
Wait, is that version? Is that the Bedrock version or Java version?
Java version. So previously the short grass, which is like not the grass block that you can stand on, but like the short grass block that you can like walk through, used to be called
just
Minecraft
grass.
Grass.
Yes.
But now after 123 or 124, it's Minecraft short underscore grass.
I don't know why I felt like it was called that for longer, but maybe I just haven't noticed. But yeah, that's
the tall grass was always there though, right? It's just the short grass.
Yeah, tall grass has been that way.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The short one though, they just must have made a slight modification. I don't know if was grass lent to something else, or did they just remove it entirely?
I think they removed it, which is probably a good idea, because I think a lot of people were kind of like trying to replace stuff with like the grass block, right? Like the one you can stand on.
Oh, yes.
And so they did Minecraft grass, and then they expected that to be the grass they could stand on, but instead it have a bunch of floating grass that just like destroyed itself.
I'm still accustomed to typing 2 for a grass block.
Yeah.
That's true. You can't go wrong with those numerical, as long as you remember them for sure. But no, going back to Axiom and all of these, if it isn't Axiom, has there been? I know we talked about the worst project, or the thing that you said you decided not to pursue with, but is there a favorite project? If it is Axiom, then that's pretty cool, or Flashback. But is there anything else maybe that comes to mind?
Project as a whole, probably my favorite is Axiom, just because it's very special to me, because it's the first project that I've really been truly able to fully dedicate myself to, and put a whole bunch of time in, and I'm very proud of the outcome with Flashback. With Axiom. I'm also proud of Flashback.
Oh yes,
sure we'll get to, but. Yes, Axiom has a very special place in my heart for that reason. In terms of like my favorite tool in Axiom, probably just like the first tool that I made, which is the smooth tool. I love the smooth tool. The smooth tool is very fun.
It is very good.
I've seen it in action, and
it is a bit almost. Sure. It is almost too good, which is a good thing. But
yeah.
I'll have to try it. I got to do more terrain in my city so I can actually then go pop some Axiom on and try the smoothing stuff, because I've heard a lot of people rave about it, and I have yet to try it myself. I'll admit that openly, but I now after this I'll make sure that after hearing from Moulberry himself as well that I'm gonna have to absolutely try that out 100%. Let's get into Flashback then. In your case, what do you think was the driving force behind getting that put together and released? Was it out of people saying, "Oh, we need a mod that does this," or did this come from an idea that you think, "Oh, this might be cool that if this was a feature or something that was available to creators that were maybe not specifically just builders, but also did want to say release it in content form"?
With Flashback, it was primarily just seeing a whole bunch of YouTubers say, it would be cool to have an updated version of Replay Mod, or have a version of Replay Mod that has a whole bunch of fixes. There were a number of independent, might I add, YouTubers who came to me and were asking for this. Like, they had talked to each other or anything, but they were just like, oh, Rory, you've created Axiom, what about hint, hint, nudge, nudge? It would be really cool if, there was something like Flashback. And so, I was like, sure. And I spent, I think, about 2 months on it. Surprisingly, it did not take as long as I thought to get to the stage where it is now. Obviously, there's still a lot of issues and bugs that need to be ironed out. Many, many bugs. Many, many bugs. But, but yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely in a state where people can look at it and kind of see where it might be heading and get excited about it. So that's very cool.
There were some features that I sometimes say, oh, I wish we had this feature in Replay, and I can't remember who I was talking to, and they're like, oh, well, Mol's working on an updated mod to replace Replay. I'm like, oh, really? I'm like, oh. And that's when I first heard about it. But it was kind of funny because all the stuff that I imagine that I want to do in Replay, I heard that you were already putting it in Flashback. I haven't had a chance to try it yet, but I will at some point for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of... So the Flashback is definitely very much oriented towards content creators, right? The purpose is very much for creating cinematics for videos. That said, there's a little bit of an interesting difference between Flashback and Replay Mod. Replay Mod has this 2 timeline system, and Replay Mod is very optimized for creating time lapses, right?
Yes.
Unfortunately, Replay Mod, because of that design, it's a little bit more difficult to use for non-time lapses, right? Like, if you just want to get kind of a short normal clip, that 2 timeline system can be quite it can add a lot of unnecessary steps, right?
Oh yeah.
And so with Flashback, I'm using a single timeline system where the replay and kind of your keyframes for the replay are on the same timeline.
Right.
And as a result of that, it's a little bit more difficult to use for time lapses.
But it's more for cinematics.
It's not that bad. It's all right. Yeah, it's a little bit more for cinematics. It works for time lapses. There's like a dedicated time lapse keyframe, and it's definitely supported. And you can use it for time lapses. But there's a bit of a jump, I think, that people are having some trouble with. Like, if they've been using Replay Mod for time lapses, and only time lapses, then coming over to Flashback, it can be a little bit, it can feel a little bit different. The way that it works, or the way that the time lapses work, and I've tried to kind of smooth out that process a little bit, but it's very difficult, right? Because on one hand, I obviously want to make it as easy as possible to use for people who are coming from Replay Mod or who are creating time lapses, but on the other hand, I don't want to sacrifice the usability for people who are trying to create regular cinematics. So there's kind of this middle ground that I need to strike, which I'm still working on improving a little bit. But
that's fair, but because you don't want to lose the essence of the original reason that you created the tool in the first place, too, right? To address a lot of those things from the content creation side. So it's still quite commendable that such an approach is possible. Now, if you're listening to this, to you listening, and you might not be familiar with some of the differences, what would you say, I guess, if you were trying to describe Flashback to somebody who maybe was a light replay user, or somebody who was mostly comfortable with replay, but maybe wasn't familiar with some of the issues that people or what were some of these concerns that you say that sets Flashback, aside from the couple of timelines apart from replay? Maybe just to kind of help pitch it in a sense.
I think one of the cool things about the Flashback changes is, firstly, the UI, right? Like, the UI has a lot more options in it. Uses the same UI system that I use for Axiom, which means we can have all kinds of windows and other things. Like there's like a visuals tab on the right hand side with like a whole bunch of different options that you can adjust and change directly. Another thing that's really cool in Flashback is the ability to have different keyframeable elements. So in addition to, being able to keyframe your time lapse, in addition to being able to keyframe your camera, you can also keyframe things like time of day, right? So if you wanted to have a shot where like your character is walking and there's like the sun is spinning in the background, you can do that with a time of day keyframe. You can also, for example, keyframe FOV. So if you want to do, a dolly zoom or a contra zoom, or if you just want to just do a zoom, you get.
That's something that I've been missing. Is that?
It is really cool.
That was one of the very specific things that creators were asking for, like originally, before I'd even started on Flashback. It was like, can we have the ability to keyframe FOV? And like it might sound like a really small thing if you haven't kind of done content creation, but like the ability to put zooms in is quite powerful.
And it's something that I'm always wanting to do, but I'm just can't with replay. I'm like, oh, I wish I could do that with this clip. Sometimes I've done that multiple times where I've thought that. And I would definitely have to try it out. Maybe for the cinematic of my next video, I should test it out.
Yeah, because otherwise what you'd have to work with the cameras themselves if you wanted to almost simulate zooming. But I mean, they only work to an extent too. But actually,
or you'd have to do it in post where you kind of forcefully zoom.
Yeah.
In.
Yes,
and it's
exactly,
not as effective. It just doesn't
precisely
give the same effect.
Or rather than when you do it straight from the source, then yeah, that's amazing.
Does the daylight thing override like the current daylight in the game? Is that how it works?
Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
It just
oh
changes
man.
it.
That's nice.
Yep. There's a whole bunch of other things that you can do. A green screen. You can like one thing I added recently was the ability to you can like just turn off the sky, and then you can click a button, and then as long as you choose like say MOV or like QuickTime, you can export a video with like transparency in the background, right? So like if you just want to have
that's what I need for another video I'm working on.
Yeah.
Then, gee, Meg, Mulberry's timing couldn't have been any better than now.
Well, I
So
had full
something to look
intentions of
forward to.
checking out the mod. I just didn't. I knew some of the features, but I didn't know all of them. So I'm learning a bunch of stuff now.
Well, this is great too for me because now we get to grind the gears on where there are certain features or even just experiences as a whole that I feel like I'll benefit greatly from Axiom and from Flashback on. And of course, you're listening here like, Rainboom, you've been living under a rock. Where have you been this whole time? So you can blame me all you want. I just have been really slow, I'll admit, with the modding world, but I'm looking forward to it though, for sure.
I mean, that's fine, I think. Like, a lot of people, they're very used to the tools that they've been using for a long time. And if you've been using a tool for, like 5, 6, 7 years, generally speaking, you're going to get quite good with that, right? So there's definitely a very strong argument for, like, just kind of staying within your comfort zone and, being able to use the tools that you're most comfortable with, right? Because that's the most important thing, right? Like, it doesn't matter how being able to use a tool that you're familiar with, right, and being able to capitalize on that tool fully is very, very important. And if you're in the middle of a project, it's not really worth switching up your like entire workflow to like learn a new tool, to learn Axiom or to learn Flashback. But I do think that if you do have some spare time to like sit down and maybe try these tools, Axiom or Flashback, see how it can like work for your specific workflows, see where you can integrate it into your existing workflows, that people could probably get a bit of benefit out of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, no, untapped potential. That's I think what I was leaning towards, where I know that there might be some level of comfort, and for me, well, I'm just I guess I'm a rather basic builder when it comes to just supporting tools as a helping hand, and then I'll just do the rest by hand, as very tedious as that may sound. But then sometimes, yeah, with a lot of new tools, and I mean, I've been telling myself for the longest time that I was actually going to try and have a look and get the look and feel of Axiom, and now I guess when I get Flashback, but there could be some things that that I thought I was doing in the best way that possible for my workflow, but then not realizing that, oh, maybe there's actually something that that Axiom or any of these other new mods I've never tried before, other things entirely, even in general, could help me out with. So with all this, then, Mole, in terms of now Axiom being well known across, or at least I think it's well known, because everybody that I've turned to at least has some working knowledge of Axiom, and also with the excitement around what is already out with Flashback and what else is to come. Is there anything else entirely that you've got in mind in the future, project-wise, that's still either a concept or something already in the works that you're willing to share?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned previously, the reason why I made Axiom in the first place was because of this project called Gauntlet, which is this Minecraft server that you can, or again, still working on it, but you'll be able to join it and play it. It's a roguelike dungeon crawler. This has been probably like 4 years or something in the works. I think it's gone through a lot of different iterations, but hopefully I'll, be able to start getting out some demos and stuff. I can maybe send some footage to you, Meg, which you can like put on the screen or something. I'm not sure if that's something you do, but there's a lot of very cool ideas that we're working on there, and hopefully we're going to be able to create a game within Minecraft that is enjoyable.
A game that's enjoyable.
Well, yeah, it's very not the best way to phrase it, but like,
I hope.
I think the gist is there. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
It's like you don't want to create a game that's unenjoyable. That
No.
would be the worst case. That would be the worst case scenario, for sure.
Is that a project that you initiated like originally, or was it something that was like a group effort? I can't remember what you said earlier.
Yeah, so I started it, and then very early on, I was joined by Soko, who's now a good friend of mine, and he does most of the building. And he's the reason why I created Axiom. He's the person I created Axiom for. I'm frankly not a very good builder myself. I'm good enough to like have an intuition for what makes a good tool, but actually beyond that, creating something, I defer to Soko, who's the expert. But yeah, so he's doing kind of the building, a lot of the game design. I'm doing all the programming and a bit of the game design. And I think we cover for each other in quite a good way. So
yeah, that's really exciting.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. Is there anyone else actually you want to shout out while we're at it too, that has helped in some way or been closely associated with any of your projects?
I think the only person I think would be Mogswamp, who very early on with Axiom made a video on Axiom. He also made a video on Flashback, but just talking about Axiom, and as a result of that, I think that kickstarted a lot of the interest or a lot of the awareness that people had with Axiom, because before that it was very, very niche, right? And not a lot of people were willing to give it a try. It was still very, very new and all of that. And I think Mogswamp, really did a huge favor in showcasing the mod and giving it an initial, burst of popularity. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome, actually.
I think we've covered most of the questions. I was asking around in our, I asked in my Discord if anyone had any questions for you. And I think some of them we kind of covered early on, just about how you got into Minecraft and how you got into developing and all that stuff. But there was one other question in here. I don't know if you wanted to ask it, Rainboom.
Sure. Well, I also have one that I'll ask that I want to throw in that I'll say is a community question for me.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, we'll start with this one, though, too. I think because it's something that might be on our minds. It says Empire92, who developed Foway, or Fast Async World Edit, is also from Australia, apparently. And this is something that I didn't know, but apparently this is an interesting fact. But is there something about Australians and build plugin genius programmers? Maybe putting the two realms together. Do you know of any other fellow developers or anybody in that realm, Mole?
I'm not familiar with too many Australian developers. But it's tough down here. On the bottom of the world, we're always hanging upside down. We got to like shackle our feet to the floor so we don't like fall into the sun and all that. Really keeps you on your toes, and is a huge motivating factor for creating these building tools.
That's fair enough.
Oh man, that's true. That's true. That's true. So I'm gonna pivot to the other question that I had, because I guess I don't know if I would really call this a community question. Okay, maybe I'll pretend that I'm some random community member who put this question in. Mole, and this came up because we were talking about all the different mods and plugins from earlier on in this chat. But this actually goes for everybody, for all of us. What do you think of all the mods and plugins and whatever is that exist in Minecraft? What do you think is the coolest mod name ever that's out there? Or your favorite one from a naming perspective?
From a naming perspective?
Yes, which one has the coolest name?
Actually, to tack onto that, you should also tell us how you came up with the name Axiom.
Yeah. Well, okay. I could talk about how I came up with the name for both Axiom and Flashback. I think for Flashback, it was a lot. I googled like film terminology, right? And there was this big list of like film terms with like 500 different like terms on it, and I was just like scrolling through. I was like, none of these are any good. And then I got to like the F's, and I was like, Flashback. I was like, wait a second, Flashback. That's really good. That's where Flashback came from. I mean,
that's catchy too, actually. Yeah.
And I think Axiom as well just kind of came from, because like the word axiom itself in like mathematics is like a foundation, right? It's like the foundation from which everything else is built. So that's like kind of the angle that I was taking, right? It's like the tool was like the foundation, or like you use that as the foundation to build things in Minecraft, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, a bit of a stretch there, but that's the idea at least.
But still, oh yeah, no, I mean it's quite unique. I mean it's now become pretty much synonymous with your name too, Mole. So there you go. I mean, we could call it the Mulberry mod at some point one day if you ever wanted to. No, you know what came to my mind when I was thinking of that question, because there are some really quirky mod names out there. For instance, there's I mean, this is all subjective, but the Bobby mod, the beer mod or something, which is what, like better entity something rendering. I forgot what it stood for. But the one that extended rendering, I think, or something like
that.
Yeah, something along
entity
those lines.
Extended rendering.
Yes, that one. But then people just call it beer, and you don't know that that's what it does until you realize what it does. So, Meg, how about you? Are there any?
Oh, like as far as like a favorite named mod?
As a quirky or an interesting, maybe you wouldn't say favorite, but it might be saying interesting.
I don't even know
name.
all the mods that I use. Let me go see.
Hard question.
Let me see. Yeah. What mods do I use? Well, Lightmatica is kind of a weird name. Where did that come from?
I think the original was like Schematica, because there was a mod called Schematica, and then
it was like the light version of it.
Mesa created a light, exactly.
Or like Tweakeroo, like where does like Tweakeroo is kind of a funny name.
That's another one. Yeah.
There's a lot of fun mod names.
Honestly, even
having a good name for your mod is half the battle, to be honest.
Yes. There's the Easy Edits, which is a recent one from somewhere, which I know
that one's easy to remember.
That's easy because it's just easy edits. But what else? What other ones are out there? I mean, there'll be a lot of names.
Axiom. It's pretty good, pretty catchy.
Axiom, yeah.
Yes.
Arceon.
Oh yes. Arceon,
Archeon,
and some.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I've
always said Archeon. I know some people say Arceon, but I always think of it as, I don't know. I've always said Archeon, so then I think I get other people saying it, but I only hope I'm saying that correctly, because
I guess that makes sense because his name is Arcaniax, right?
Yeah, I
like
think that's kind of where
so I guess
it
makes sense if it's Archeon.
Yeah.
Either way, I think that one's a pretty cool and unique name.
So then you should make a plugin called Moulberry.
Moulberry.
That doesn't quite have the same ring.
No, it doesn't.
I might have to workshop that one.
Something just to go, or I mean, I still think what was the one that I just had mulberry something that was I can't remember what it was anymore. But
Mulberry
either way,
bush. I always
that'd
think
be
of a
pretty cool.
mulberry bush or something.
That sounds like that'd be
That's the
kind
name of one of
cool
my
mod pack.
Discord servers.
Oh, really?
Oh, hey, there you
Mulberry's
go.
bush, yeah.
Oh, that makes so much sense. That's so clever. I love it.
Yeah.
Did you have any final questions? I do have one more question, but if you
Go for it. No,
okay,
you
we'll
can go
close
ahead.
off with this question. I just wanted to
Yes.
wrap it up with if you had any advice to give to aspiring developers, what would that be?
I think the number one most important thing is to, figure out a project that you're passionate about. Like, if you can have an idea or a project that you're passionate about, kind of everything else flows from that, right? But I think, just spend some time thinking about, what it is you want to create. What kind of project would motivate you to see it all the way through. That is the number one most important thing, right? And I think that's probably true of things other than development, right? It's like if you're getting started with anything.
Yeah, even content creation, you have to be passionate about it, or have to be actually willing to invest time into it. It's not like it's not something you can just like sit down one afternoon and expect instant success. It doesn't work that way. That's good advice.
This is generic advice, but I think it is. I think a lot of people kind of like think like it's like, oh, like I want to get into programming, so it's like what can I program, right? It's like whatever the first thing that comes to mind is, and they try to program that, and they're struggling with it, and then they end up dropping it, and it's because the first thing that came to them was just a project that that they're not really that passionate about. And like you can learn programming, you can learn algorithms, you can like learn all of these things, just as you can like learn what the right camera settings are, what the right shader settings are if you're doing content creation. But like none of that matters if you just give up early on because you couldn't find the passion in what it was you're trying to do.
But yeah, either way, at least I think it's great advice, though, Mulberry. And I mean, just a generally great reminder for just the reason behind us doing the things that we do. And even, with us, Meg, and you and I in our building realms. And for you listening to, with whatever it is that has brought you to this podcast. So, Mole, before you go, or before we let you go, is there any way we can get in touch with you, or even this said mulberry bush, if it's a community that that can be shared
I don't
amongst
typically
folks
speak too much in there.
That's fair. Or just
Mainly,
anything, any ways we can get in touch with you, or to plug anything you want, whether it's socials or just more
or
about
let
your,
people know
your
how they can get
projects.
your mods. Yeah.
Yes, that too. Where they can get Axiom, where they can get Flashback, and
I mean, I think probably the best way if you need to, ask me questions or find information about these things is to go to their servers on Discord. So for Axiom, that's discord.gg/axiomtool, and for Flashback, that's discord.gg/flashbacktool. Here, I can send them.
And we can link to those also in the video. Actually, I think I should be able to link to them in all versions of the podcast, I think. So
I think so. Regardless of where you're listening to this, surely you will be able to find links to all the things mentioned in this podcast, and that way you'll be able to get in touch with them and find your way through with as you continue on your building or content creation journey. So, with that, Mole, well, thanks so much again for coming on and chatting a bit about yourself and your projects. It's nice to meet you as well, because this is the first time you and I are speaking, actually, and
first time for all of us.
I honestly, for all of us, actually,
Yes.
no, it really is an honor to get to actually to hear firsthand, in my case, from the great mind that has gone behind some of these fantastic mods. Thanks, Mole.
No problem. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
And for you listening, until the next episode, we'll see you then.
See you.